In Stalin's Soviet Union, no one was innocent, not even the men who carried out the killings. They built the walls of terror, brick by brick, until the walls closed in on them. This is the story of Genrikh Yagoda, a man who helped design the Soviet police state, created the Gulag system, and delivered Stalin's enemies to their graves. He was loyal, efficient, ruthless. But in Stalin's world, that was never enough. Yagoda rose to power by killing others, and died when he failed to kill fast enough. Genrikh Grigoryevich Yagoda was not born a monster. He was born in 1891 in Nizhny Novgorod, the son of a humble Jewish craftsman. Like many young men after the 1917 revolution, he believed in Lenin's new world. When the Bolsheviks seized power, Yagoda joined the Cheka, the first Soviet secret police. He quickly learned what loyalty meant in Lenin's Russia. Better to execute 10 innocents than let one enemy live. Those words became Yagoda's creed. By the 1920s, he was working under Felix Dzerzhinsky and later Vyacheslav Menjinsky, the early masters of Soviet terror. Yagoda was quiet, emotionless, precise, the kind of man who followed orders without question. When Menjinsky's health declined, Yagoda became his deputy and effectively ran the OGPU, the agency that hunted and executed the so-called enemies of the people. But his true legacy was the Gulag. In 1929, Stalin's 5-year plan demanded cheap labor. Yagoda provided it by turning prisons into work camps. Millions were sent north to Kolyma, Vorkuta, and Magadan, building railways, mines, canals, and factories under the whip of starvation and frost. He promised Stalin results. He delivered them with corpses. As historian Anne Applebaum later wrote, Yagoda's genius was not passion, but precision, the ability to turn suffering into a system. By 1933, the USSR had its first empire built entirely on fear, and Yagoda was its architect. But in Moscow, Stalin was watching him closely and growing impatient. By 1934, Genrikh Yagoda had everything: power, prestige, Stalin's trust. But in Stalin's world, trust was never permanent. It was a weapon, and one that could turn at any moment. That year, the assassination of Sergei Kirov shook the Kremlin, and Stalin used the murder to begin what the world would later know as the Great Purge. Mass arrests, interrogations, executions, and Yagoda, the head of the NKVD, was ordered to carry them out. He obeyed without hesitation. Old Bolsheviks, military officers, professors, poets, all vanished into his prisons. But it wasn't enough. Stalin wanted more blood. He wanted terror that never slept. Historian Robert Conquest later noted that Yagoda was efficient, but not imaginative enough. He still followed rules, still filed reports, still asked for written confessions. Stalin wanted a man who could kill without paperwork. A man who would turn the Soviet Union into one vast interrogation room. That man was Nikolai Yezhov, the Iron Dwarf, 5 feet tall and twice as ruthless. In 1936, Stalin replaced Yagoda with Yejov as head of the NKVD. And in the same instant, Yagoda's fate was sealed. He didn't know it yet, but the machine he had built was about to devour him. March 1937. Moscow is buried under snow. Inside the Lubyanka prison, the man who once signed execution orders by the hundreds now sits on the other side of the table. Genrikh Yagoda, the former master of terror, had become its victim. The charges were simple and absurd: treason, espionage, conspiracy with foreign powers. Stalin didn't need proof, only confession, and the interrogators who questioned Yagoda were the same men he had trained. They knew exactly how to break him. Days turned to nights under the white glare of the interrogation lamps. Sleep deprivation, isolation, endless repetition, the same questions, the same accusations. At first, Yagoda denied everything. Then came the silence. Then, the trembling signatures. According to historian Oleg Klevniuk, Yagoda's downfall was not the result of guilt, but of Stalin's need to feed the machinery of fear he had created. The irony was cruel. Yagoda had built the system that consumed him. The Gulags, the false confessions, the midnight arrests. Now he was a case file in his own archive. By the spring of 1938, he was stripped of rank, expelled from the party, and awaiting trial, in the same courtroom where he had once sent others to die. March 1938. Moscow. The air inside the military collegium of the Supreme Court was thick with fear. The third Moscow show trial had begun, a carefully staged performance where guilt was scripted and every confession rehearsed. Among the accused stood Genrikh Yagoda, once the second most powerful man in the Soviet Union. Now, pale and trembling, he looked like a ghost of his former self. The architect of terror reduced to a prop in Stalin's theater. Prosecutor Andrei Vyshinsky shouted accusations of treason, sabotage, and secret ties to foreign powers, each charge more absurd than the last. But in Stalin's Moscow, truth was irrelevant. What mattered was spectacle. Yagoda tried to protest. He denied plotting against Stalin, denied poisoning Maxim Gorky, denied serving foreign spies. But his words were drowned by the roar of rehearsed outrage. Historian Simon Sebag Montefiore later wrote, Yagoda's trial was not about justice. It was about loyalty, a warning to everyone that even the enforcers could be erased. After 3 days, the verdict came. Guilty on all counts. No appeal. No delay. That same night, in a small cell of the Butyrka prison, Yagoda was executed with a single bullet to the back of the head, a method he himself had approved for thousands. The man who had built Stalin's empire of fear was swallowed by it. In Stalin's world, there were no loyal men, only temporary servants. And Genrikh Yagoda's greatest crime was believing that terror could ever serve anyone but Stalin. Genrikh Yagoda built Stalin's empire of fear. He turned prisons into factories and men into numbers. But in Stalin's world, even loyalty had an expiry date. Yagoda was replaced, erased, and shot by the same system he created. Historian Robert Service called it the machine that ate its own engineers. Stalin didn't just kill his enemies. He killed the men who made him powerful. In the Soviet Union of the 1930s, No one outlived Stalin's paranoia, not even his most faithful executioner.